We'll gather round, feel the love come down. Blue elephant is strong.
Hey guys, welcome back to my
Together
channel. So
we
we are doing a
belong.
project today that I am
Every
completely in
corner
love with. So we are going to use this gorgeous, gorgeous sunflower and purple rose sticker along with a whole lot of stuff, right? Now this tray is the large rectangle tray by Let's Resin, and it is absolutely stunning. I want to say it's roughly around 12-ish inches long or wide, whatever, the long way. It's a rectangle, so one way is longer. I don't remember what the other dimensions is, but it's gorgeous. I love it. So I mixed up a little bit of the Let's Resin Fast Cure resin. Now I am going to just put some glass glitter, and you've seen I added some Unicone crystal. Actually, I think it was the Cesio that I used, but they don't have it anymore. Unicone is very, very similar. And I'm adding some yellow glass and then some white iridescent mylar flakes to it because I want all of the shine, right? I want the sparkle, the shine, and I kind of want to go along with the colors that are in our sticker that we're going to use. And it's one of those rub-on transfers that I found. And first things first, I put the glass in here because I want to make sure that I've got kind of like an even amount going all the way through. If I had mixed it in my resin, what would happen is all the glass would sink and then I'd be pouring the resin, but the glass wouldn't come out until the end and it would just be a whole thing. So I chose to do that first. Now I've got my resin right now in my Let's Resin bubble remover just to try and get out some of the bubbles. Now, hindsight, I think I must have mixed it too fast because I have used the bubble remover with the fast cure resin before and I've not had any issues and it's gotten out the bubbles. But if you mix up your resin too fast, especially your higher viscosity resins like the fast cure resin, and you incorporate a lot more bubbles than normal, it's gonna have a hard time and you're gonna be it's just not gonna get all the bubbles out. Like they're gonna come up forever because you mixed it too fast. And I think that's what I did in this. Either that or adding those mylar flakes in just really, really just pushed in a bunch of air. Either way, if I left it in for like 8 minutes and it was still had a bunch of bubbles coming up. So I with your fast cure resin, your work time is a lot shorter than normal epoxy resin. So we're probably going to have an issue with bubbles. And if you looked at the title of my video, you know that we did in fact have an issue with bubbles that we're gonna have to do some fixing on later on. But it's fine. It'll be fine. We can handle it. So I am just pouring in kind of because it's so thick and because it's even thicker because of all the mylar flakes that I put in it. I'm kind of having to move it around. It's not flowing very freely on its own. So I am kind of moving it to make sure that I have a level kind of area all the way around. I don't want it up too high because I have a completely different idea for the background of this piece. And I just want it to be just around the edges of this tray. So that's it. It's kind of like the background, the sticker obviously is going to be our focal point, but I do want to have a pretty edge and I don't want to do the same thing that I'm doing with the background with the edge. I don't necessarily think it will work right and you'll understand why here in a little bit, but two, I just it would not be as pretty. Like you've got to have something to break it up, you know what I mean? So now I'm just going through with my silicone tool and I'm mixing up that glass and the resin so that I don't have an issue with a lot of bubbles and I can get it all mixed in so that there's not, huge air pockets stuck down there and the glass is fully encased in the resin and we don't have any issues upon demolding. And now I'm just making sure that I have resin going into those corners because they kind of slope a little bit. It's not completely flat like the rest of the tray. The like kind of rounded corners kind of come down, like when you have it demolded in the right way. If you've not seen this mold, it kind of come down a little bit. And yeah, so then I'm just going to make sure that I have all of this mixed, all of the glass is evenly kind of distributed, and we're going to clean off all of this mess that I made because I don't want to have to clean it off later, just to make sure that nothing cures where it's not supposed to be. Because I'm going color, if I left all of this white, like the clear behind, you would see it on our finished piece, and I don't want that. Now, if I was just pouring straight clear, or a clear layer first, we wouldn't have an issue with it. But because I'm not, it'll show kind of like a raindrop effect, essentially. If I'm sure you guys have seen that, but it will show. So I am making sure to clean that up. Now, as far as around like the undercuts of the mold, where I'm kind of like pulling and resin got stuck there. Before I come back on camera next time, I am going around with a little bit of painter's tape, and I'm going to get all of that off because it's going to be the same thing. If it's not clear, it will show. All those little drips and stuff will show, and it's going to ruin your piece and just show that you didn't take the time out to clean off what you could. Now, are you going to get left with some of them behind? Yeah, absolutely. You can't get every single thing done, taken out, but you do want to get the majority of them taken away. All right, so this is 24 hours later, and now I'm just dividing my resin into several different cups because we're going to use some different colors, and we're also going to use clear. Now, for this, I'm using Bond Crafter's epoxy resin, and this mold holds, I think it's like 23, 24 ounces. So I mixed up quite a lot. Now, I did have to take out some because I put it around the edge. And hopefully I mixed up enough. I think I mixed up about 20-ish ounces. And I'm going to add the Sesio Super Sparkle, which again is like the Unicorn Crushed Crystal. They don't sell this anymore, or at least not that I've been able to find when I've looking for links for you guys. And we're going to mix this up. This part is going to stay clear, so I'm going to put it in my bubble remover just to make sure that I get all the bubbles out. And now we're going to start mixing our colors. So what I decided is I want a little bit, just a little bit of silver. And the reason I wanted to add it as an accent. Now, I'm saying a little bit because this stuff can overtake your piece like crazy fast. So you've got to be careful when you're adding like some of your metallics, especially this one. Crazy fast, it's going to take over, ruin your piece. So I only want a little bit. I'm doing like half of the amount that I'm doing in all of the other colors of the silver. And then we're going with some Let's Resin mica powders. We're going with yellow. We're going with cobalt blue because it is more of a purpley color and matches closely to the rose that is in our sticker. And then we're going to do some ocean white pigment paste, and that's it. Then you'll see what we're going to do here in a minute as soon as I'm done mixing all of these colors. Now, I did take my time and I did go very slowly. I had thought about putting each one of these through the bubble remover, but by the time I honestly thought about it, I had already filled up my cups too high, and I was being lazy and didn't want to split each one of these into another cup and waste another cup. So we're just going to chance it and hope for the best. Now, as far as the pigments go, I mean, honestly, you shouldn't see if there are any bubbles in it. You shouldn't see it anyway. I do want each one of these completely opaque. I don't want any transparency at all in this. That's what I have the clear for. So if there are micro bubbles and stuff in there, you're not going to see it. So I'm not super crazy stressed on it. And I did notice that with the cobalt blue, I had to add like 3 times as much as I did with either the other two colors. And I don't know why. I mean, it's fine. It's a gorgeous color. It kind of makes me sad because then that just means that it'll be used up faster, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine. All right, now on to the ocean white pigment paste. And again, starting out small, starting out with, just about a drop and a half's worth. Mix it up really well just to see where I'm at, and then I'm going to add more from there. Pigment paste, you typically don't need a whole lot, and it can, if you put too much in there and you don't mix it well, or even honestly, if you just put a little bit in there and you don't mix it well, it can kind of stay not clumpy, but like all together in the paste form. And if it's not thoroughly mixed into the resin when your piece is dry, if it floats to either the bottom of the mold or if it's on the top, you will actually, it'll stay in its pigment form and it will come off onto you, if that makes sense. So you do want to make sure that you add it slowly so that you don't use too much and mix it really, really, really well. Okay, now I'm pouring my clear first. The reason is I want effects in my resin. If I did not put the clear first, because we are working upside down, so however I pour it without the clear, that's how it's going to stay on the bottom. You may get effects on the top part of it, but that's not going to make a difference for this piece because there's no way for me to have this part that you're looking at right now be the top of it. It's going to be the bottom. So I need to make sure that I'm doing something to translate those colors to make sure that it happens on the right side. Now, as you can see, as I'm going around with my dotting tool, there were a couple bubbles that were in the cured resin and I poked through, and I am just taking my dotting tool and I am pushing the resin into those holes and getting that air bubble out so that once it's cured, you won't see it, and otherwise it would show as a bubble. So that's, if you have like a second pour that you're doing and you can do that, that is what you want to do, and it will make that disappear like it was never even there. All right, now we're going on to the colors. Now, when you look at this, I know it kind of looks kind of gross right now. And I have an image in in my mind on what I want and the look that I'm going for. And as I was doing this, my thought was, "Oh my god, what am I doing? I'm just wasting all of this resin. This looks hideous. This is not going to it's just not going to be what I want it to be. There's no way, like there's just not." But you've got to trust the process, right? You've got to. Now I am going in with my white over top of my micas because white is heavier, so it'll kind of sink and push those colors down. And at least in theory, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm kind of dragging some color around the edges because I do want a little bit of it to kind of drop down into the the sides of the tray. I don't necessarily want it completely clear, but we'll see if it's going to happen or not. Now, you notice I haven't added my silver yet. I wanted to get the main bits of color in first, and I am blowing it really, really well with my heat gun on high to fan out those colors and make them start to move. And then I'm taking my dotting tool and I'm running it all the way down again, trying to get some movement in those colors so that when you flip it from and look at it from the other side, you're not going to just see it in the way that I poured it, if that makes sense, because typically that's how it would be. So I do want to make sure that I am kind of going in there and getting all the way to the other side. Now the clear is going to help with the separation of the colors and to get some of those effects that we're looking for, but we need it to translate on both sides. Now, this is similar to what you would do to get the crackle effect. That's not the exact effect that I got, which I'm fine with. Like, I absolutely love it. So it's cool, but it's kind of what you would do. Now, I had a little bit of clear left, so I'm just pouring it on top. I kind of wanted to save a little bit to do almost like a push in the middle of the tray, but I didn't realize how much it would actually take to get a solid, like, layer of clear resin along the bottom, and I used up all of it. So had I had resin for a push, we would have got a completely different effect. But it is what it is, and it turned out fine, so I'm fine with it. Went in with my silver. I did not use it all. Okay, 24 hours later, this is what we're looking like. Again, this is the back. And you can see all the striations from the different colors and how they pull to the middle because that is how resin cures. It pulls it all to the middle. Now, this mold is slightly tricky to get off. You need to work out the corners first before you can demold. So I just went around and just kind of broke the seal all the way around the tray. And now I'm just taking it out corner by corner to release it. And it's not hard. You just got to get that part out. And, obviously you don't want to use so much force that you're going to tear your mold, but it's a pretty sturdy mold, so you should be pretty fine on that. Okay. Now, here is another tip for you guys. After we look at this, I love it. I think it looks like clouds almost, just like billowy clouds just of all different colors just kind of in the sky. Like I think it's absolutely stunning, and I really really like it up with this sticker on the front of it. Like I just think it's absolutely gorgeous. But let's talk about the other tip. Some of these molds that are big like this, if you looked at the mold, how it has the cross sections for the stability of the mold, and when you demold, you get those lines in your finished piece, right? We don't want that. You want it because you can actually kind of see it. So, in order to kind of deal with that problem, all you need to do is do a thin clear coat on the top, and that'll take that away. You won't have the kind of bumpiness that you get on there from those supports, and it takes care of that problem. Now, for this sticker, I am just very carefully, I kind of centered it as much as, I could, eyeballing it. And very, very carefully, I am just slowly lowering it down and taking my finger and rubbing it across all the way so that I don't get any bubbles in there. I don't get any wrinkles in there. And it just is a solid, nice piece. Now, this is pretty. It's absolutely gorgeous, but I think that we need to add a little bit more detail to it. So I feel to bring the flowers out a little bit more and make them pop, what I want to do is I'm going to take my gold paint pen and I'm going to take my silver paint pen and my eyeliner brush. And I am just going to go over the tips of each one of these flowers. The purple will be done in silver and the sunflowers will be done in gold. Just the slightest bit, just a slight little outline, and it is going to make such a huge, huge difference in what you can see from far away, what you can see up close. Like just the smallest amount of attention to detail can make such a huge difference in your project that it makes it look like a completely different piece. So that's what I'm going to do real quick. And then after I'm done doing this, we're going to do our top coat, and then we're going to come back and we're going to address all of these bubbles that I got along the edge of my tray, and make them go away. At this point, though, I am just going to put on some background music for you, and then I will be back when we're ready for the next step.
Casting a masterpiece, not a single flaw. Bubbles in my resin, that's a big no-no. How to make jewelry, a shiny piece to wear. Bubbles popping up, giving me a scare. I got my torch and my slow stirring hand. Getting rid of bubbles, now that's the plan. No bubbles allowed, it's my resin decree. Bubbles in the mix, no, not for me. Reciters unite, let's make it clear. No bubbles in our art, we're pioneers. Mix it slow and steady, a gentle blend. Watch for the rise, bubbles tend to send. Heat gun ready, I'm on the attack. Bubbles in my resin, they're never coming back. Epoxy dreams in the middle of the night. Bubbles in my resin give me quite a fright. Silicone molds and pigments on display, but no bubbles here, just take them away. Pour it just right and let it set. No bubbles here, that's a safe bet. So smooth and glossy my canvas shines. Bubble-free resin, pure art aligns. No bubbles allowed, it's my resin decree. Bubbles in the mix, no, not for me. Reciters unite, let's muster in here. Getting rid of bubbles, now that's the plan. That's the plan. No bubbles allowed, it's my resin decree. Bubbles in the mix, no, not for me. Reciters unite, never coming back. Epoxy dreams in the middle of the night. Bubbles in my resin give me quite a fright. Silicone molds and pigments on display, but no bubbles in my resin, they're never coming back. They're never coming back. Pour it just right and let it set. No bubbles here, that's a safe bet. So smooth and glossy my canvas shines. Bubble-free resin, pure art the lines. Pure art the lines. Dude! Pour it 2, 3. Pour it just right and let it set. No bubbles here, that's a safe bet. So smooth and glossy my canvas shines. Bubble-free resin, pure art the lines. Let it just right. Pour it just right and let it set. No bubbles here, that's a safe bet.
Okay, I'm back. Now, tell me that doesn't make just the biggest of differences in this. Okay, so for this part, I mixed up some of Let's Resin's tabletop epoxy, just a little bit. I just needed to do a thin layer on this just to seal in the sticker and that paint that I put in there. I did add a little bit of Rolio Pearl White, and I decided that why not, let's add a little bit of the Marabou Rainbow Alcohol ink for some extra sparkle and just prettiness, because why not? So I started with 2 drops of the Marabou, and then I couldn't really see it, so I added about 3 more. I don't know. I think it gives it a little bit. I'm There's so much going on that I just don't think that you can necessarily really tell. You definitely see the Rolio a lot more. And I have decided that I've used several different like super sparkles, and I think my favorite one by far is the Rolio Pearl White. I don't know why, but I think I like the look of it better. I like the shimmer that it gives more than even like the Unicone or the Sessio one that I have, or any other of the ones that I've tried. I just, it's easier to mix in. You don't have to mix it quite so much. The smallest amount like ever is what you need. Like, it's just, I think it's my favorite. I really do. Anyway, not that anyone really cares, but back to what we're doing. Now, for this, I am taking it for the corners because the corners do kind of go up at an angle. I'm not taking it all the way up. I am just taking it kind of to like right inside where it starts to go up, and then we're just going to leave it. But I am spreading it all the way, making sure that it's kissing every single edge of this tray so that I don't have an issue with curing and all of that stuff. Now, I'm sure when you looked, you saw that there's a bunch of bubbles in it, and it's fine. This is going to be such a very thin layer that honestly, all the bubbles are going to come out, just they already came out just in me heating it up with my heat gun just to make it a little bit more movable and like just thin it out some. They're gone. So because you're only with tabletop resins, I think it's usually like 1/8 of an inch. You're not supposed to go over that, and it may vary brand to brand. Um, so you're never using like a super thick amount, or you shouldn't be, or you can, we can have all kinds of exothermic reactions and flash cures and stuff like that that nobody wants. But anyway, so bubbles really, I mean, yeah, obviously you want to do your due diligence to get rid of them and make sure that you don't have them and check on stuff and whatever, but they really shouldn't be a problem unless you're mixing like a crazy person and a lot faster than you should, and you have like a crap ton of micro bubbles, and then you need to slow it down a little bit. But anyway, so that's it for this piece. We are going to let this cure. Now, I'm sure everyone's like, well, why would you do this? This is like the last part. This is like right before you finish, before you handled the holes. I don't know. I don't know. That's just the way I felt like doing things. Now, for this, there are a lot of tiny air bubbles along the very edges of this. Now there are some like in the middle of the top of it, but most of them are along the edges, and that's just from that glass and from that the mylar flakes and it just not coming through, being able to come to the top and get through all of that. So I'm just kind of taking a little like teeny tiny detail sanding thing and just kind of smoothing out those edges. And then what we're going to do, the easiest way to kind of fix these is take the tiniest, teeniest little drop of UV resin. And I mean tiny. And you do it one drop at a time. And I'm sorry, it's really, really hard for me to see these tiny little things and bring it up close to my face and keep it in camera range. So I apologize for going over, but do it one drop at a time, because the other thing that you don't want to happen, and what I have had an issue with in the past, is if you are trying to fill one of your holes and you put too much UV resin in, well, now you've just created the opposite of what you're trying to fix. So instead of having a hole, now you have it and it's bumped up over top of it and it ruins the finish of it anyway. So drip by drip. If you notice that it is kind of coming up and over where that hole is, wipe it away, take your finger, wipe it away, do something, get rid of it before you cure it, because it will cure like that. And then you're just going to open yourself up to a whole nother set of problems because it's just going to look weird. So for this, I went along and I really necessarily wasn't worried about any of the teeny tiny little holes that were along the flat side of this, because what I'm going to do is, since I've got all of these little UV resin potholes that I filled along the edges, I am going to kind of top coat just the edge of this piece. Now, let's talk about this for a minute. These corners slope down a little bit. Okay? So typically, I don't like to top coat with UV resin. My preference will always be epoxy over UV any day of the week. UV resin has its place, but I don't like doing UV resin projects necessarily. I would do even jewelry, I would rather do it epoxy. So I would rather do this epoxy resin. However, because of time, for one, um, that just wasn't an option. So UV was really my only option to kind of finish this off. Now, the one thing that you could do on something like this is, say you didn't necessarily want to do a UV resin top coat, because there have been people like Wendy from Pembridge Crafts. She has showed where you can separate the layers. You can separate the UV resin from the epoxy resin. It can happen. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen all of the time, but it can happen, and it does happen. So, especially if you're looking for longevity and you are trying to maybe sell your pieces or gift them to someone, you don't want to gift them something that's going to necessarily come apart. So, epoxy would be the way to go, but you're not going to be able to do those corners with the epoxy because it's going to run off. That's just, it's a fact, because it's sloped. It's not flat. It's not level. So what my suggestion would be is to go ahead and do the little rounded bits of those corners, maybe with UV resin first, and then go along with your epoxy resin, and it should level itself out, and just do the flat parts with that. And just make sure that it is touching all the way to each edge of the piece. Now, if you're worried about it running off and running down the sides, you could definitely take some Elmer's glue and glue it on the sides of each one, or take some painter's tape or something like that, liquid latex, and do it just like you would if you were doing a top coat to a coaster or whatever, to protect your piece. If you're not worried about it, then, you can do it and cross your fingers and hope for the best that you have no runoff. But in theory, if you filled all of those holes you know, as long as everything's level, it shouldn't happen. But I'm not going to tell you whether to do that or not because lots of things can happen. Um, anyway, so there are different ways to fix your bubbles so that you don't have to scrap the whole piece or, you know, do a bunch of sanding. Now, I did make sure that as I was filling each hole, I was running my fingers over it to make sure it wasn't snagging. You could definitely sand it down a little bit if you needed to. But I think that as long as you do drip by drip with the UV resin, it should be good enough. Now, epoxy is not an option for that because it's just going to run, right? And it's not going to cure fast enough. You need something that's going to cure fast. So, UV resin, a little flashlight, and you should be good to go. Anyway, that is pretty much a wrap on this one, guys. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. I will see you guys on Saturday in the next one. Love ya. Bye.
Together we belong. In every comment right, you lift me to new heights. Your support, it's clear, gives me reason to cheer. Blue elephant crew, this one's up for you. You make dreams come true with everything you do. Each subscriber's heart playing a vital part. Videos we share, showing how much we care. Likes and shares, they grow.